Global wheat prices have soared after Moscow made new threats that will impact shipping. Russia says all ships headed to Ukraine through the Black Sea will be seen as potential carriers of military cargo. And this comes after Putin ended the deal with Ukraine to export grain through the Black Sea. The move is expected to devastate food supply in Africa, something that will be up for discussion at next month's BRICS summit. That's the meeting of Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa taking place in Johannesburg. Vladimir Putin has recently decided against attending that summit. There were questions about whether he would face arrest if he went to South Africa. That's because the International Criminal Court has a warrant against the Russian president. Rieaz Shaik is the South African High Commissioner. High Commissioner, thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
I want to start with the summit your country is going to be hosting, the BRICS summit in the near future, that Vladimir Putin was scheduled to attend. He's now decided he's not going to go. Is that a relief for your government that he won't be showing up and you could be faced with the pressure to arrest him for war crimes?
Well, that's a very interesting thing. Yes, it was a consultative decision. Lots of engagement by the BRICS leadership with President Putin to arrive at the understanding, a consensus decision, that he would be best represented by the foreign minister. Of course, it is, in a sense, a plus for the BRICS summit, because it allows the summit to deal with its issues without being sidetracked by the ICC warrant of arrest. So I think, and I know this will be difficult for you to accept, but I think it is also an indication of willingness of President Putin to listen to voices of reason. And that gives the world a little more hope in regard to other matters that we will resolve in respect of the African initiative, in terms of bringing peace to Ukraine and Russia.
Is he listening to reason, or is it an act of potential self-preservation? Because if he leaves the country and the plane has to land somewhere, I mean, he can be grabbed, he could be arrested. I mean, was South Africa prepared to execute the warrant and arrest Vladimir Putin had he shown up?
Well, there was a opposition party that brought a legal challenge to the government to compel the government to arrest. And my president made quite clear that an arrest of a sitting president is in fact a declaration of war, and we were not ready to declare war on any country, being the fact that we are a peace-loving country.
Is it a declaration of war even if the person is considered by much of the global community to be a war criminal? Does South Africa consider Vladimir Putin to be a war criminal?
That is a good description by much, but not all, and definitely not by the United Nations. As a country that abides by the United Nations and multilateralism at the very center of our diplomacy, we do not believe that the United Nations has declared President Putin as a war criminal. And even on the ICC warrant, it is for very specific and, if not, as others will say, subject to scrutiny of the evidence. So we should not go into the matter of the ICC warrant, but the warrant does exist, and we note that the United Nations has not declared Putin as a war criminal.
But what does South Africa think when they look at the bombings of cities and the hitting of civilian targets, the abduction of children that has been alleged, now the blockading of the grain ports, and just an invasion itself, in the 21st century? I mean, how does South Africa view those actions, if not as aggression or as a war crime, when civilians appear to be deliberately targeted?
David, again, we speak from our lived experience. We know that we have come through the most harshest of crimes against humanity, that being apartheid. And we resolved our matter through peaceful negotiations. We embrace peaceful negotiation, we embrace the peaceful settlement of conflict. And again, we will do everything to contribute to the peaceful settlement of the issues between Ukraine and Russia. And we invite all other parties to join us in the effort to bring an end to that conflict, to bring an end to, again, and I want to say, the illegal invasion of Ukraine. We must bring an end to it. We must deal with the issues that has led to that invasion. And we must do this through the multilateral arrangements that we have in the world.
The issues that have led to that invasion. I mean, Russia is what did the invasion. I mean, they're responsible for this, are they not?
Well, if you listen to the Russian side of the debate, that they were concerned with the eastward expansion of NATO. Now, whether that is valid or not valid, the issue is the matter should have been resolved by the United Nations. And again, we don't think it's too late. And Russia should have taken its concerns to the UN. It should be allowed to take its concerns to the UN. And we should empower the UN and the Secretary General in particular to resolve this matter through multilateralism.
But far from resolving it, Russia appears to be escalating. They've pulled out of the Black Sea Grain Initiative, and today they've issued a warning saying they will deem any ship in the Black Sea bound for a Ukrainian port to be hostile. That's a threat to sink commercial ships, is it not?
Well, we think that Russia's decision to unilaterally pull out of these multilateral arrangements to be regrettable. African leaders have expressed their regret on the matter. And again, my president is engaging with President Putin to bring him back to the multilateral arrangements. And again, we should empower the United Nations to resolve that matter. And whatever the concerns of Russia are in their national interest, those issues must be tabled in the UN.
But I mean, it's what appears to be the weaponizing of a global food supply and the threatening of commercial shipping. You know, this is a new step. I mean, this is potentially widening the war by Russia, and that has nothing to do with NATO expansion. This is a new measure for them.
David, I was hoping that you would not use the word weaponization, because there is no monopoly on which countries are weaponizing what. Critical minerals have been weaponized. Friendshoring is another version of weaponization. So I'm glad that we reject weaponization, but we should be principled on the matter. We cannot reject weaponization on one issue when it suits us.
Food is different than critical minerals.
Yes, food.
I mean, we're talking about famine and food shortages as a direct result of this.
And do not forget that we are the net losers of the weaponization of food. We have the poorest of the poor in Africa. So it is in our interest to resolve that matter, to bring maximum pressure to bear so that it is resolved. But we would want it to be resolved within the United Nations. And that is where we differ in part.
How could it potentially be pushed towards resolution at BRICS? What will your government do? What will your president do? Because I know it won't be Vladimir Putin, but when Sergei Lavrov arrives in your country for this meeting with Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, how will you use that forum to try to push Russia towards maybe ending the blockade and certainly removing this threat against the commercial ships?
Well, certainly we will want to hear the concerns of Russia for why they pulled out of a multilateral arrangement, unilaterally so. And on understanding of their concerns, we will engage. I mean, there are the other countries. Based on our understanding of the Russian issues, we would want to raise these matters with the United Nations to make sure that this matter ends as quickly as possible. But so too is Turkey's president. He has promised to engage President Putin to understand what are the issues of the suspension and to bring back a resolution of the matter as quickly as possible before the net effect of this blockade starts to affect the poorest of the poor.
Is it not just as simple that Russia is the bad actor here? That they invaded a sovereign country for kind of trumped up reasons?
We're dealing with the world of global politics. And the one thing we have learned in South Africa is not to take value judgment on matters, because that leads to binary. It leads to evil, good, bad, etc. The issue that needs to be resolved is what are the problems and what are the stated problems that people put on the table, and how can we resolve those issues multilaterally. I leave value judgments to powers higher than me. I'm a practitioner of resolving problems, and so too is my president, and so too is our government.
But it seems like an obvious solution would be for Russia to withdraw. I mean, the stated attempt, this denazification and the extermination of the Ukrainian state.
You mean withdraw from Ukraine?
Withdraw from Ukraine.
We have stated that openly and publicly, that a central pillar to this resolution of the Ukraine war is the respect for United Nations borders, borders as agreed by the United Nations, respect for sovereignty, the return of all occupied territories. But those are the issues that we hope one day will be negotiated. But so too, I must say, David, must be the concerns that Russia has in respect of its threats to its national security. I think, and I just want to raise this matter with you, it's a wonderful dictum by which we live by, and it goes ad positiva via negativa. The direction to the positive is to remove that which makes us fragile. So if Russia is feeling fragile in respect of its own security, we have, as a global community, must address that problem. And by addressing that problem, we remove that fragility and thereby creating a much more resilient world. And that is the approach we will take.
Okay, I appreciate your perspective. Rieaz Shaik, South African High Commissioner to Canada. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, David.